All right, let me get into the buy low, sell high players. Buy low, sell high. Buy low, sell high. All right. When it comes to buy low players, it's tough week one because a lot of times it's reactionary, right? We're overreacting to things that happen. Teams typically figure it out. I've seen weeks where Devontae Adams has come out slow, 3 catches for 20 yards, and then the next week he has 10 catches for 200 yards. I'm not saying that's the exact games, and don't quote me on that, but those are the kind of things that happen. Sometimes players come out the gate slow, or maybe they don't have preseason, or maybe they're banged up to come into the year, and the teams start to figure things out. And it's vice versa. We've seen strong week ones that don't pan out. I think everybody's so used to last year or trying to equivalate this season to what happened last year, right? When it comes to, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, just early season standouts. Devon Achane, obviously last year, broke out in a major way. So all trying to look for who are those players that are going to be top 15, top 20 type guys at their position. But I also think we're fading some of the positions and players that we're used to seeing, in that we trusted. We did all this month, these months of research and mock drafting to draft these players. And I think they're getting penalized a little bit too much for their week one performances, especially the first player, Derrick Henry. He scored a touchdown week one. And yes, this was against the KC defense that is underrated. Derrick Henry to me is one of the ultimate buy lows. And I think you can get him as an RB2 right now. He was drafted probably top 7, top 8 at the running back position for your team. But Derrick Henry is the type of player who can score multiple touchdowns. He can go for 100 yards. And I know John Harbaugh came out and said, we're not going to give him 30 carries like we did in Tennessee. That's not his role. But this team's still going to run the football a lot. And we saw it last year, even with Gus Edwards. In the red zone, they feel comfortable using their running backs. Different type of game last week. We saw Isaiah Likely get featured heavily. We saw Zay Flowers get featured heavily. We saw a couple pass attempts to Derrick Henry in the game that didn't connect. So the big concern here is if he's not getting receiving work, he's definitely touchdown dependent. Even last week, if he didn't score a touchdown, it would have been detrimental to your fantasy team. He did score the touchdown. He will catch passes, not at a Saquon or Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall rate, but Derrick Henry will catch 30 to 40 passes in this offense. It's just going to happen. He had 3 or 4 targets within the game, just uncatchable balls. I think Derrick Henry is the ultimate buy low candidate. Going up a Raiders team that's inferior to them, they should be out. I think the line for the game is 9 and 9.5, somewhere in that range. This is a player you want. You want a player like that on a winning football team that's probably going to win somewhere between the 10 and 12 marker when it comes to winning football games. This is the kind of talent that you want. You want a player who's going to be a 100-yard, 2-touchdown threat every single week. So I think Derrick Henry, a little penalized for his week one performance, a buy low guy for me in my book. I could talk about Mark Andrews as well. I'm not going to go a whole lot into Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews, same thing. This Ravens team just has multiple weapons. And I think they were trying to feature some of their guys. Zay Flowers close to the line of scrimmage, Isaiah Likely in the passing game, giving themselves a second option at the tight end position. I think we see a bounce back from Mark Andrews. I wouldn't call him a buy low because I think it's buy at the right price. At mid-tier tight end one, I think we need to tier down Mark Andrews. But if somebody's completely given up on Mark Andrews and thinks Isaiah Likely is the starter, I don't think that's the case. I don't see it that way. I think Mark Andrews will bounce back and it'll level out. I don't think this is a Mark Andrews' top 5. I don't think Isaiah Likely is like just a fluke game. I think there's consistency for both guys. Mark Andrews is a buy low, but only at mid-tier or a tight end one price if you can get him outside of that. Another player I think is a buy low candidate, obviously Drake London, and you might even be able to wait another week on this before we call him a true buy low. I'd like to see what Kirk Cousins looks like on Monday night against the Eagles, but this is a team that has given up passing yards to receivers historically in the past, and even in this season. We saw Jaden Reed have a really nice day last week, and obviously on the ground and in the air. But Jaden Reed having a really nice day. I think Drake London can have a solid performance against the Falcons if Kirk Cousins looks the part. He struggled. Kirk Cousins struggled against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. But this Eagles defense, we know in order to beat the Eagles, you're going to have to score points. And they are vulnerable because of that defensive line. They are vulnerable through the air. Got some injuries in the secondary as well. So I think Drake London has to become a bigger part, I'll say, of this offense. And we know it goes through Bijan Robinson. We saw it was very evident in the game. The offense goes through Bijan Robinson. But they have to make Kyle Pitts, they have to make Drake London keep cogs of this in order to open things up for Bijan Robinson, because we saw the touches, but we didn't see the chunk plays. A lot of eyes on Bijan. We didn't see the chunk plays last week, which they're coming. If you drafted Bijan, those are coming. Drake London as a buy low for me, though. This is a guy we drafted as a top 15 to 12 wide receiver, depending on your league size. A lot of best ball. He was drafted as a top 12 receiver. The better days are coming from him. And I think on Monday night, while everybody's watching, it'll be a high leverage situation. Either Drake London shows up and he shows out in a major way. You'll never get him again at that price. Or maybe he has a dud and there's an extra week for a buy low. I do think he's a buy low candidate, especially with the Falcons having a soft second half schedule. And then as far as another receiver, JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, we drafted him as a wide receiver 4 with upside. Last year, he was a top 35 receiver coming off the board, entering in the draft. And there's been a lot of hype. You know, when you're a first-round rookie, there's a lot of expectations. A lot of people expect things out of you performance-wise, right? And you're drafted to a team that already has a bona fide number 1 receiver in DK Metcalf and kind of a guy that can take care of the short to intermediate range in Tyler Lockett. So you have a little bit of a struggle bringing your new offensive coordinator. The offense is supposed to look better, but then the team is getting safeties and struggling to move the football outside of the run game against Denver. So going up against New England, this is a good opportunity for a bounce back game. I expect it somewhere in the 4 to 6 catch range for JSN this week and a likely shot at a touchdown this week. I think this might be the last time you get JSN at a comfortable price. If I had to start him or sit him, I'm still sitting him right now, still putting him on the bench, letting him show me what he has. You feel me? Like I'm not just pushing forward with JSN as the guy, but I think he has better days ahead. And this might be the lowest. We were expecting him to break out into that top 30 receiver range if everything went well. There's still time for that. So don't give up on JSN. Don't cut JSN. This is a player either leave on your bench or try to acquire in a deal, even as a back end piece if somebody else is tired of him. How y'all feeling about the buy low so far? Good? Y'all feeling good about him? I got 2 more buy lows and I'll answer questions. Go to sell high. And then I'm going to talk about the try hard parlay. If you missed it already, it's going down there. You probably already seen it. But the try hard parlay is coming. 2 more buy lows and then I'll get into the questions. The next buy low candidate, I think Tajay Spears deserves a little bit more love. Now, Tony Pollard did look like the clear better back to me against the Bears. And I think he is the better back. But there's been a lot of talk. Brian Callahan has come out and said they want to get both backs involved. They want it to be more of a 50-50 split. They want it to be a 1A, 1B. And typically when teams say that, they'll overcorrect things and try to make an emphasis to prove that they have 2 options in the running game. I also think they're trying to keep themselves a little bit less vulnerable because their quarterback is not as good. Will Levis, obviously, they're trying to hide him. And he made some erratic throws last week. I expect Will Levis to be better down the year, but they need both running backs to be in the game. They can't just have Tony Pollard be their lead back and Tajay Spears be the receiving back. Otherwise, I think that gives up too much information to the defense. I think they'll use both backs a little bit more, keep them both fresh. And we know Pollard is really good in a limited role. Really good in a limited role. We saw that in Dallas when he finishes the RBA and PPR leagues. Now, when it comes to Tajay Spears, though, there's volume in the passing game, volume in the run game. And if you're going to beat the Jets, it looks like the Niners kind of exploited some things. It has to be on the ground. We know their secondary is elite. They're already a tough defense. They were the best defense in the league last year against in fantasy, right? Like best fantasy defense almost on a per position basis. They were top 5 at almost every position. But this is it. Tajay Spears is a name that could have a good performance against the Jets this week. I think it's a good time if you're looking for upside running backs. This is a running back that does carry upside that you could find. There's a really big gap between like the starters and then the upside backs. Tajay Spears is one of those names you probably can get for the low and find some value. All right. And then the last name I want to talk about is Michael Pittman. I think we might be able to wait a week. He's still a buy low for me, though. I'm a little less optimistic than I was about him, but I think he might be viewed as a wide receiver 3 by most. And if it comes through this week and he goes against Jair Alexander this week against the Packers, and this is a lower scoring game, which it kind of feels like it will with Malik Willis on the other side, Michael Pittman is going to be a value. He saw 8 targets, and they weren't the greatest targets. Obviously, when your quarterback goes 9 for 22, it's not a great thing, but I think Michael Pittman will be better. And I think after this week, this might be the ultimate buy low. So if you can get him as a wide receiver 3 right now, I'd say pull the trigger. All right, that does it for the buy low players. I will talk sell high, and then maybe I'll do the try hard parlay first. Sell high. Sell high candidates. Y'all not gonna like me for these. Y'all not gonna like me for these. But typically, I don't sell high on players after week one. I don't. There's one type of player I always sell on for better or for worse. And you're going to hear all three of those names right now. For better or for worse, this is the time to sell the week one waiver wire pickups. Why, Justin? Why would I spend my money, my fab, my high earned waiver priority to trade away the guys I just picked up that can help my team? When it comes to the waiver wire, there's going to be one of these guys I miss on. Literally, it's going to be a miss. And I'm going to say sell high for all three. I'm going to miss on one of them. But when you're able to capitalize on top of the market value, I always think there's a case for that. Always. Isaiah Likely, going as right now, he's the best tight end in the game. A lot of people think he has now entered the elite tight end. And if he does, congratulations. Like, you're going to have a phenomenal player. But I also see a world where somebody in your league views him as his top 5 tight end, and it ends up being more of a split between him and Mark Andrews. There's people in your league who would rather have Isaiah Likely than Mark Andrews. You may be one of them. It's easy to forget contracts in this situation. It's easy to forget players who have done us well their entire careers. And I think Mark Andrews is getting a little disrespected right now. I briefly touched on him as a buy low guy. But Isaiah Likely is the epitome of what a sell high guy is. In a split, he's not the starter. Him and Mark Andrews will split, even if it's a 1A, 1B thing. They will split reps. There's going to be weeks where he looks good and Mark Andrews looks good. And this is the opportune time. If you can sell him as a top 5 guy, top 7 guy, I think if you can go get yourself a Dalton Kincaid who hasn't played well, you can go get yourself maybe a George Kittle who didn't have a very strong game. You can go get yourself a Mark Andrews for Isaiah Likely and somebody else. There's a lot of people. Evan Ingram. You can go capitalize and then raise your floor. I always recommend that. Even if somebody else outproduces, now you raise your floor. Because say Isaiah Likely is a top 5 guy, there's also a world where he's a tight end too, and he had a strong performance. So Isaiah Likely on the sell high meter for me. I always sell guys after week one, especially when they have strong weeks and they come out of nowhere pretty much. Another player that fits this mold is J.K. Dobbins. You're like, why would you sell high on J.K. Dobbins? He looks like he's going to take over. This is also another player who's in a split. Coaches mentioned hot hand. He's better than Gus Edwards, in my opinion, as a runner, but he does still have injury concerns. Coming off the Achilles, he's been injured in his past, torn his ACL before. J.K. Dobbins has been hurt in the past. So I'm not saying he's going to get hurt, but when you have risk like that and you can sell it as an RB2, you can sell it as a high-end flex. For a player that's splitting work and did have a chunk play last week for a touchdown, now, you know what I mean? There might be some hidden value in this for a guy that you took as a bench player for your fantasy team. So you either took him as a bench player or maybe you picked him up. This is the opportune time to sell a player at their highest value. Find somebody, package him up together with somebody, because on paper, in your inbox, it's going to look like you're getting a high-end RB3. Oh, man, I'm getting J.K. Dobbins and player B. Like player B, that's also good. That's a beefy offer. It's going to seem like that on paper. J.K. Dobbins, one of my sell-high candidates, get rid of him while you can. And I'm not saying he's not going to pan out and be an RB2, but there's a lot of risk that comes with it, especially not just the injury, but the fact that he's splitting work with another guy who is very capable of handling 10 to 12 touches a week, as he did last week in Gus Edwards. He had 11 carries. And then my last sell high, you guys are probably be like, what the hell are you talking about, J-Han? Which I get a lot. You guys are probably going to be like, what the hell, J-Han? Jordan Mason. I have Niner stuff in my background. I'm a Niner fan. I believe Jordan Mason is going to be a phenomenal player. But there's also the possibility that this IR thing is just that. It's IR. And Christian McCaffrey comes back at some point. The person who asked Christian McCaffrey, the person who needs a running back in the league, is not thinking of it that way. They're thinking, I need to get wins right now. Jordan Mason, where is he ranked? He's ranked as an RB2. That's what everybody in A Mama's going to think. You will get season-long RB2 value if you trade Jordan Mason right now, because he also offers RB1 upside. So at floor, you will be able to acquire somebody in that RB2 range. There's somebody who is tired of Travis Etienne. Jordan Mason is somebody else. We'll get you Travis Etienne. There's somebody who is tired of Derrick Henry. Jordan Mason may be able to get you Derrick fucking Henry. Jordan Mason is part of a very high-powered offense that utilizes the running back. There's a world where Jordan Mason will be traded as an RB2. Somebody in your league will value him as that, especially the person who's maybe lost Christian McCaffrey. He is as sell high gets, in my opinion. That's if Christian McCaffrey, which it seems like, that's if he goes on IR. It's a 6 to 8 week injury. In our hearts, because of the way it happened on Monday and the fact that the Niners have held this injury back from us, this feels like a season-long injury. It feels like that in our heart and in our mind. Christian McCaffrey, he's a bust. Jordan Mason is the name to trade right now to beef up your lineup and go get another locked-in starter for your fantasy team. All right? So those are the sell high guys. There's 3. And like I said, they're all waiver bench picks.